Caregiving experience feels like it takes over every part of your life, including your spaces. And what do you do when you just get tired of sharing your space with caregiving? We're going to take a break from that during today's Soul Break. Hey everyone, I'm Denise Brown, and every month we gather for a soul break. And I think of a soul break as a time to just take a break from what can crush our soul. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes that feels kind of brutal, but I think, there are times, there are situations, there are people during our caregiving experience that simply break our heart and crush our soul. And we talk a lot about what happens for our heartache and how we can heal that. And what I like to think about is what do we do when our soul is just crushed? And that's a soul break. Each month when we get together, we focus on a theme. And so, again, today's theme is a soul break from sharing space. So, I want to kind of set the stage for you around what we're talking about with shared space. Our shared space could be an emotional perspective. So, for instance, it could be that there are just times when it feels like everyone's emotion is dysregulated and you are sharing space with that. It could be a caree's difficult day. It could be another family member's kind of like a temper tantrum about caregiving. And you're thinking, why are you having a temper tantrum? I'm doing it all. But anyway, you're sharing a space with someone in their temper tantrum. That's the emotional part. Then the mental part is what you're thinking about caregiving. It could be the worries that you carry about caregiving. And then certainly there's this physical space. And it could be that it's your caree's home and that's where care happens. And there are equipment and supplies there, but it also could be your own physical space. For instance, if you don't live with your carrier, you're still managing the schedule, making phone calls, thinking about strategizing about, planning about. So there are physical spaces that are impacted by caregiving, regardless of where your caree lives. And then we share social space. And there are times when you feel like, I don't think I can get together with people who don't get caregiving because I just can't tolerate chit chat. I don't want people to ask how I'm doing or ask about my caree. So I'm not going to go to those social settings. I might go to a social setting where no one knows me and I can just be who I am. And no one has to ask me about caregiving and I don't have to feel the pressure to talk about it. And then there's the spiritual space. And I think of that as keeping the faith, however you define faith, living your value system, whatever that might be, living your belief system, whatever that might be. And then we can think about sharing space with equipment, people, a process. You might have a process in place around meal prep, around how care happens, how you check in about whether or not care is happening, a process around double checking your list, about financial planning, looking at the bills. You have a process, and then you are involved in a process, and it could be another systems process. Like, for instance, if home health starts, there's a process for the home health nurse to ensure that the care that's provided meets the criteria for Medicare coverage. So you might start to get into a process of documenting so that coverage continues. I actually have a coaching client who does this because her husband receives hospice services. This is the second time he's qualified for hospice. The first time he was discharged, and she was devastated because it finally was help for her, help and support. And then he was discharged and it all went away. So now that it's back, she has a process in place for documenting changes. So she feels confident that coverage through hospice services will continue. And then we have supplies. It could be supplies related to activities for our carry, for care related to our carry. Could be our own supplies that we need to get through the day. It's a lot, isn't it? And I don't think I've gotten the entire list of our shared spaces, and it already feels overwhelming. Okay, so as we go through today's soul break, I'm going to present a series of questions for you, and it's your time to simply reflect. It's not about immediately coming up with a solution. It's about reflecting on the reality of your situation so that you can acknowledge what's painful, what's hurting, name it, and then start to think about what could help. So here's my first question for you. When does sharing space frustrate you? Name the individuals involved in sharing that space, what happens when you get frustrated about sharing the space, the time of day. For instance, perhaps you have a ritual where you get up before everyone, and every once in a while someone gets up during that time that's just for you, and then you think, where did my solitude go? Now I have to share my space. So frustration can come from what impacts your expectation of a space, and then it changes your expectations for the worst. And I just love this picture. I love this image. And I particularly relate with the young man on the left who has a scowl on his face. I love his scowl because that's what I think internally we feel like. We're scowling when we are frustrated that we have to share our space. So when do you get frustrated? You might have just one example of that frustration. That's great. There might be a couple that come to mind. It's okay. Whatever it is that just resonates with you, just jot it down so you can be aware of that time. I say this on a regular basis, and that is during caregiving, we sometimes feel like we have to endure. I'm just going to put up with this. I'm just going to grit my teeth through it. And you know what? Enduring is not a coping strategy. So we're going to think through another strategy that doesn't involve you gritting your teeth and just bearing it. Because you have to bear a lot, and you don't have to bear everything. Okay, so that's the reality. That's your truth. Let's think about this question. What space can you keep for yourself? And I picked this image because we can be open-minded about the space we keep for ourselves, because it might not be a room, but it could be a journal. It could be a walk outside. It could be a phone call with someone who helps you feel better. So think about this space that you want to keep just for you. And what we're doing now is helping you think, you know what? I do have a space, and we want, in a perfect world, for that space to be accessible for you when you need it, which is why I think of something like a journal or a walk outside, something that you can do when you feel like I just need my own space. And I suppose we could think of the relief of just being yourself in the space you want to keep. So for instance, this journal and the cover says, be brave, be bold, be beautiful, be you. So where's the space where you feel like this is me, this is who I am, I'm not pretending, I'm not being gracious, I'm not I'm not just bearing it. This is where I unload. I relieve myself. I release. So where is that for you? It could be in a book that you read. It could be something that you read regularly that you think, when I sit here with this book, I am me. It could be music. I'm coaching a client who is really trying to adjust to her husband's declines because of his diagnosis. He has Alzheimer's disease. And she really does believe, or she believed this until our last coaching call a couple days ago, that she just had to fight her way through the day. And that if she took a break, she was inadequate. Isn't that interesting? That was the word she used to describe herself, inadequate. If she had to step outside the room because she was starting to lose her patience. She doesn't lose her temper, but she was losing her patience. Well, of course she would lose her patience because the day was demanding too much of her. And so I suggested to her that she include recovery time every day, not just on the terrible days. She was taking recovery time on a terrible day, stepping outside of a space that she was sharing with her husband and his disease process, and it was getting too much for her. So she would remove herself. And I suggested, give yourself a chance to be away from that every day. And I said, what is it that helps you, that comforts you? And she said, music. So she's just going to step into another room whenever she can throughout the day and listen to the music she wants. She can be herself. Okay, here's my next question for you. What's the space you share with everyone but caregiving? If caregiving was a person, what don't you invite caregiving to? And I picked this image because I love the colors, but I also love this idea that it's like game night. Well, we're not going to invite caregiving to play a game with us. I mean, we play too many games with caregiving already, or caregiving plays too many games with us. So caregiving doesn't get a seat at the table when we're playing a game on family night. There might be some times during your day that you just think, you know what? I don't care what's happening. We're not talking about caregiving. We're not worrying about it. We're not organizing it. We're not strategizing or problem solving about it. This is the time without caregiving. And what's that space for you? It could be daily, it could be weekly, it could be monthly. It could be something that's daily, something that's monthly, something that's weekly. Whatever it is that feels right for you. And if you think, oh, I'm just not sure where to go with this, start with something. Just start with something. The space that includes everyone but caregiving. Okay, here's my next question. What space will you share with caregiving? And I liked this image because it's simple and yet impactful. The idea is you're sharing space with your caregiving calendar. And you've created a space that is not busy, but is pleasant. So it's easy to work in this space, it's easy to be productive, and it's easy to organize. So if there's a space that you share with caregiving, like a calendar, where do you actually go through the calendar? And if it's something that you do online, like let's say it's a Google Calendar, what's that setting like for you when you go through your Google Calendar for the next day? What music do you listen to? What time of day? Where do you sit? Perhaps what's the environment like? Maybe you start diffusing essential oils so that it smells good. Maybe you have a comforting cup of tea. If it's first thing in the morning, maybe you have your favorite cup of coffee and you always have something pretty to look at. So, what space will you share with caregiving? Then, how do you make it inviting so you feel good about sharing that space? We finish up our soul break with belief statements. And it's nice to create belief statements because it keeps you in the right space with your head and your heart and your soul. When you have belief statements, then you have an insight into what works for you. So, for instance, your belief statements about shared space could be, I believe I can keep a space that doesn't include caregiving and visit that space whenever I want. I believe I can have an organized, well run, efficient caregiving space. I believe I can create a space for my caree that doesn't include caregiving. I believe I can create a space for my kids that doesn't include caregiving. I believe my family can share a space with caregiving, and that space runs well. The belief statements help us be a little bit more intentional about an experience. And I find it particularly helpful with an experience like caregiving that swallows you up before you see the whale with the wide open mouth. You are swallowed up before you even knew something was coming to get you. And if we can actually take a moment to be intentional, we don't keep finding ourselves underwater. It's a way for us to get back up so we can breathe. We can create belief statements based on different categories. So this wheel gives us an insight into different categories of our life. You might think of other categories. This is just to inspire you. And you might think, you know what, I'm just going to create one belief statement, and that's around play. And it could be, I believe I have time to enjoy playing with family, even during caregiving. I believe the holidays during caregiving don't have to be overwhelmed by sharing the holidays with caregiving. I believe I can figure out how to share a caregiving experience with my dreams because I don't have to give up my dreams during caregiving. I believe there's space in my day for my health because I want to share good health with people I love. just some suggestions for you about belief statements you can create. And again, it just helps us create intention, to have a roadmap to use our energy wisely. We want to keep refueling because it's impossible to always have the right amount of energy during our day for what our day requires. And if we can think about how we can refuel, then we can stay in a better place. Then it feels easier to share caregiving, because caregiving then isn't taking up all of our energy. We're sharing our energy with caregiving, and we're sharing energy with other parts of our life that remain important, like relationships or career or hobbies or interests. What's most important is that we don't give everything up to caregiving. We want to share our life with caregiving. And I think that's one of the ways that we can figure out how to keep a life during a life of caregiving. Okay, so here's my last question for you. And that is, what's the best use of your space? So this is a more global perspective about your space, thinking out loud about the different spaces you encounter during the day and what's a good use of those spaces. And it might be that you think, you know what, we are doing well with our spaces. And then you might think, and there's one space we're not using that we could actually start using that could be really helpful. Or perhaps there's one space that somehow got overrun by clutter. And this is the weekend you think, I'm going to spend a little bit of time decluttering, because that space, when it's well organized, is something I feel great about sharing. What's the best use of your space? Okay, I'm going to tell you the questions that we reflected on today, and then I'd love for you to share any answer to any of these questions in our comments section. So here are the questions I asked. When does sharing space frustrate you? It's so important that we name it. What's a space you can keep for yourself? You deserve your own space. What's the space you share with everyone but caregiving? Caregiving isn't invited. What's the space that you feel okay about sharing with caregiving? You think, okay, this is where I do it, and I'm going to make it look good. So I feel good being in this space and being a part of caregiving. And then finally, what's the best use of your space? Okay, thank you so much for joining me. Our soul breaks happen on the third Thursday of every month. You can join me live. We meet at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the archive is posted on our YouTube channel and on caringourway.com, our online community, the next day. You can watch all of our archives when you have about 20 minutes and you feel like, oh, my soul is hurting me today. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for being here. And I look forward to your comments. Bye-bye.